Welcome back to Gaming Assembled. Today is a CK3 Game of Thrones Spotlight episode on the Valley of Thenn. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, we'd love to hear from you, so like, comment and subscribe to the channel and interact with us on social media. And thank you to Ethan Armbruster and Sincere Noble for subscribing already. Let's get started. Welcome back to Westeros. Welcome back to CK3, a Game of Thrones mod. In today's video, we are doing a spotlight episode, I suppose. It's a request from a viewer that I had in the comments that wanted me to look at the Valley of Thenn. Now, this valley is, as you can tell, very much north of the wall. We are about as far north as you can go, really, with this. And the Valley of Thenn featured in the Terrain teaser dev diary quite a while ago that was released, obviously, before this beta was. And the idea of it is it's something of a unique place north of the wall. And so we'll talk a little bit about it. We're just going to have a quick look at it as an area and the starting position that you have if you do start a campaign up here. Things like that. We're going to just have a little talk about it. We're not going to do an actual game. We're not going to start a campaign on it, but it's just a bit of a spotlight of it as a feature. So, let's talk a little bit about Thenn. For those who don't know, what we're talking about is this valley up here. Obviously, the Thenn are a people. They're one of the wildling tribes. And their area, their valley, that they live in, you can see is somewhat different to the surrounding territory. Obviously, the common theme for many of the names up here obviously relates to trees and things, but also, the cold, how cold it is. Many of the places, Wintermouth, there you go, Coldwood, things like that. And of course, the one thing that you can spot immediately about Thenn, about the Valley of Thenn, is that it's green. And so the idea behind this, and they talked about this in the developer diary, is that it's supposed to be in the lore, in the canon of Game of Thrones. It's a valley that is, I suppose, volcanically, geothermically active, and they compared it, I think, to Yellowstone Park in America. And the idea is that even in the midst of all this ice and all this snow, it's green because of the geothermal activity that's going on underground, keeping everything warm, warming everything up, and so trees and plants and things like that can survive, and it makes it a much more pleasant place to live. And so, that's the first thing you can see from this. We'll just have a quick look at the map. We'll zoom in at the map of this area. I'll try and move my mouse so it doesn't sort of keep putting this sort of highlighted bit on. But the idea is that, I love the idea of it. I love the just the terrain, really, and the details that the devs have gone into with this. You've got, obviously, it sort of tells you something about the past, about the culture, about the, just the people that live there, really, I think. The Thenn are, in the canon, they claim to be the last of the First Men. The last surviving peoples of the First Men. And the idea is that you then have, I suppose, things that would mark that. So you've got, for example, the monoliths and things. The sort of, I'm trying to move my cursor to try and make it so it's not highlighting and making it go not green. But, there we go. But you see things like that. You've got the monoliths. You've got over here, look, the standing stones and these sort of very religious, very cultural, sort of Stonehenge type structures. I think it gives you this sense of a good deal of history there, of cultural presence. Harkening back to the past and things, and it tells you a little bit about them, I think, as a people. And the details of the settlements and things. The models used in the settlements. Obviously, it's the same, I think, for all the wildling tribes, but obviously you've got these tents, almost like yurts and things. There we go. Zoom in a little bit more. See if I can get it central. But near enough. There we go. And so, you've got these sort of like almost yurt-type tents and things, and very much temporary structures, rather than castles and things like that. I think, I suppose the one that's most featured in terms of North of the Wall, most featured in terms of, say, the TV show, is obviously Craster's Keep, which is down here. Which this is, even that is listed as that. It's done in a sort of this same model. But the idea is that it's differentiating it from the people south of the Wall. They're culturally a different people, which, I think just says a lot about the level of detail that the devs have gone into. You've got the geezers and things, or geysers, I'm not sure which way you pronounce it, a bit like sort of Iceland type sort of situation, showing you the geothermal activity underneath. And I love the details of things like the waterfalls, where obviously you've got all this snow and ice up here, and it's turning into that as it's coming down from the mountains and things. You've got these pools where it's cooling, it's coming down. I think the level of detail is brilliant. It's fantastic, really. So that's the first thing, I suppose, to mention about this area if you are wanting to do a campaign up here. Let's talk about the starting position as a dynasty, a tribe, I suppose, in this case. You start off with this character here, so Magnar Styr, of son of Halleck, there you go, of the Thenn. And again, in the canon, in the lore, he is not so much a king, but almost like I suppose a bit more akin to a pharaoh in sort of ancient Egypt. He's sort of semi-godlike. He's something a bit more than a king. He's not just a man. There's an element of divinity there. And this does, I think, give you some role-play material to work from in terms of, the mentality of what you're trying to do. I mean, you follow this religion, which again is based on that. So it talks about, the Magnars, believe their king is closer to godhood than man, and he's worshipped. And so, godly leadership, all these different traits and things, which I suppose when you're talking about expansion, if that was, depending on, I suppose, I don't know whether his traits are randomly generated or whether he always starts off with some of these, whether it's a fixed character or not, I'm not sure. But the idea is that if you are expanding outwards, your neighbours, for example, follow a different religion to you. And so if you're looking from a roleplay perspective, maybe that would give you, we consider them astray, look. So according to the religion of the Thenn, our neighbours are astray. And so, depending on the character you're looking at, well, maybe that would give you a reason to go to war. You're not going to war purely just to paint the map a different colour. Same with these guys. You've got some scope there as a beginnings for the story. The idea that you are this godlike king who doesn't necessarily, depending on the character that you're playing as, the traits that you've got, maybe he's a warlike character, but maybe he's trying to save his neighbours. He sees the error of their ways, he sees what's coming or something like that, and he wants to save them. I don't know. There's I suppose fuel there for a perspective. There's for a roleplay sort of angle to work from, really. So there's certainly a good setup there. The other thing that you can consider when you look at these peoples is that you will have a bit of an advantage over your neighbours regarding culture. I mean, there are obviously various traits and whatever, but the one that I would point out is this idea of metal workers and the last of the first men. So, last of the first. So, you'll notice on the map, see if I can find one, there we go. You've got these things here, which I presume are representative of copper and tin mines, which in the canon is something that separates these guys from the other wildlings. They have utilized metalworking rather than purely making weapons out of bone and wood and things like that, and stone, as is the case with the other wildling tribes. You're using copper, using tin, you're using alloys to try and make something better, to try and improve. And what that does is it gives you access to other troops that you wouldn't normally have otherwise. So you have these guys, the Bronze Raiders, which are heavy infantry. And, I mean, there we go, I'll read the description. So, hailing from the rugged tundra of the Thenn Valley, the Bronze Raiders are some of the few wildling soldiers that make use of native-made metal weapons. Alongside their impressive armaments, the Bronze Raiders are fearsome in battle, the only heavy infantry found north of the wall. So these guys, although obviously bronze weapons aren't, weren't as strong as steel weapons, so obviously it's still not going to be quite the same as it would be if you were playing somewhere south of the wall where there's sort of steel metalworking going on. It's a decisive advantage to people who are using bone and stone weapons. It's, potentially. So, I mean, I don't know if we can see. Let's see, if we hover over here, light footman, bowman. So if we look at these, if they're, again, pikeman, bowman, light footman, it's very much a similar story. You're the only one that's got these heavy infantry. So there's a nice story element there, a nice side of things. So ultimately, as a starting faction, if you like, a starting dynasty, from a roleplay perspective, there is a lot to work with. I mean, you could, if you want, start as Magnar Styre. No problems. You could do that. You do start off over your domain limit. Bear in mind your domain limit is 1. So probably if you're starting as him, you're going to want to hand out some titles anyway. Maybe try and work on improving your domain limit. Perhaps with a suitably skilled spouse. Bear in mind as well, I should point that out, is that with the religion, it's polygamous. So there's an actual piety penalty if you've got too few spouses, which, excuse me, if you have seen some of the work I've done on CK3 for other things, the Madeira campaign that I did, again, that one there, that was obviously a North African religion and things, and that was the same. There's not as many, with it being polygamous, there was an actual penalty for having not enough of husbands or wives, depending on the gender of your character. So it's a factor to consider, and it's going to make, obviously, succession that little bit more interesting, especially given the tribal nature of the people up here. So there's things to consider there, challenges to consider, things to work with. You could play as the king. You could land someone and then switch characters and play as them. Depends on which way you want to go, I suppose. But you've got options there. It uses the same mechanic as the Iberian struggle in the base game. So the struggle beyond the wall. So you've got this sort of system still in place, which I think again will give you some advantages and bonuses depending on what phase you're in and things like that. That's quite an interesting mechanic to look from as well. They do. I had a quick look at the Royal Court. It is unfortunately still the standard, I suppose, Royal Court. So you could be back in northern France or something, without, if you didn't know otherwise. So, perhaps that's something that they're going to work on. The devs are going to work on moving forward, making it more of a tribal theme. Some sort of yurt or something, if that's possible. I don't know. I'm sure there's something they'll do. With royal courts up this end of the world. But it's a relatively minor issue. It's not anything serious that. So I certainly think it's well worth a playthrough. There is lots of scope from a storytelling perspective to work from, and well worth a visit. So hopefully that will satisfy the request that I had to have a look at this area of the map. Hopefully I've done it justice for you there. If there was anything further you wanted me to talk about, obviously please do talk about it in the comments and we can have a chat, and that's not a problem. I do try to reply to all the comments that I get. But otherwise, if you want me to look at any other areas of the map as well, let me know. We can always do more of these little spotlight videos and talk about different areas, different cultures, different places on the map and look at them. That's not a problem at all. Just put your requests in and I'm sure we can try and work with those. But otherwise, thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful. And as ever, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.